9. The Savior Returns. Written by Celestial Rainstorm. Narrated by AJ the Elementalgod. Chapter 11. Taking the Offensive. Reality crashed upon him like a wave. The searing, throbbing pain in his leg was gone, replaced only by a dull ache. He opened his eyes slowly, taking a deep breath. Everything was dark, and he had no idea where he was. Blinking again, he noticed a dim light from the corner of his eye, and from his vision. 9 breathed deeply, blinking again, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling. Everything was unfamiliar. 9 lifted his head, slowly, realizing that he was lying on his back. He surveyed the space around him, his aching mind whirling with the events of the past night. He immediately saw 5 sitting nearby on a bobbin, anxiously waiting for his friend to wake. The one-eyed stitchpunk was staring at his hands, brow furrowed and worry. His crossbow was propped next to him, armed with an arrow.
5?
9 asked wearily, allowing his head to slump back against the soft material beneath him. Fatigue still clouded his mind, and he could no longer hold his head up. He closed his eyes and sighed again.
9, you're awake. Oh, thank goodness,
5 cried out. Hearing 9 whisper his name,
2, he's awake.
His voice called out to the elder Stitchpunk. Despite his fatigue, 9 struggled to stay awake. A rush of weakness overcame his body before he passed out again. 9 tried to sit up on the cot. However, the spy machine's attack had weakened him greatly, and he was unable to. 5 rushed to his bedside and put a hand on his back, lifting him in a sitting position on the side of the cot. 9 rubbed the back of his head and then looked down. His right knee examined his leg. It was healed, sewn back together with a dark-colored thread.
This is the second time you've had to stitch me back up,
9 said, laughing wearily. He kneaded his brow, trying to rid himself of the dreadful pounding in his head.
Well, you did it for me,
5 replied, touching his eye patch before putting his arm gently around 9's shoulder. He was very relieved that he was all right.
Thanks,
9 said, smiling up at him, then smiling grimly, A small glimmering light filled the vacancy, and 2 hobbled in. Supported by his cane, a small flame flickered on the wick of the candle on top of his hat that 9 constructed for him. He had tinkered with it, and now is working much better. His golden eyes behind his monocle lit up happily upon seeing 9 was finally conscious.
Ah, my boy, thank goodness you're finally awake.
We were rather worried about you. 2 laughed joyfully, coming over to 9 and patting his shoulder. Stooping down, his knees shaking with old age, the elder closely examined the stitching on his healed leg.
Ah, wonderful work, 5. Very well done. You learned well,
2 complimented, standing back slowly and smiling at his student.
Oh, well, I've had a great teacher, you know,
5 said, looking at his feet, embarrassed. 2 smiled even wider. 9 sighed, shaking his still aching head.
Where are we? Is everyone okay?
He asked them tiredly, rubbing the back of his neck.
Don't worry, lad.
Everyone's fine, 2 consoled him, patting his shoulder.
You gave us quite a scare, but I knew you had the fortitude and pluckiness to fight off that beast,
he said, grinning with a twinkle in his eye. However, 9 did not smile back, or show any ounce of joy. Instead, he got to his feet.
Well, where are you going?
5 asked him. 9 struggled to keep his balance as he stood. He immediately felt like the world was spinning around him, making him dizzy. He swayed, nearly falling backwards. 5 was immediately there, holding him up and looking nervous.
Whoa. Maybe you need to rest a little longer,
he said. Nine shook his head and gently pushed 5 away.
No, I need to see 1. Where is he?
Nine asked them, searching each worried face. 2 and 5 shared a fleeting, apprehensive glance.
Come on, I'll take you to him,
5 said, sensing Nine's anxiety, and the 2 walked through the crumbling building. It was a dull, collapsing wooden structure with shattered glass and cases knocked over. It was like a small shop. 9 followed 5 throughout the ancient shop, trying not to limp in front of him. He didn't see any of the others, and that made him all the more anxious, and had to remind himself that 2 told him everyone was all right. 1 was by the window of a large room, sitting in an old rusted jar, and leaning heavily on his staff. He was rubbing his temple jadedly, looking older than ever.
1!
9 called, running to him, ignoring the slight throbbing in his leg. 1 turned, his eyes narrow as he saw the young man, and he stood, meeting 9 halfway through the room.
1, there's something,
9 said breathlessly, but 1 cut him off.
I had thought you had brought us back to a world. I thought we were free to carry out our lives as it was intended to be.
He growled, the anger radiating off of him. 9 blinked, slightly taken aback by 1's fury.
I know, 1. I'm sorry, I didn't know,
he said uneasily, looking at the floor, then back at him.
But there's much more serious things going on here. Like what?
1 snarled, cutting him off once more.
A beast coming and destroying yet another home of ours?
1, listen to me, 9 shouted.
The thing that got me stole the talisman, and it fixed the machine. It fixed the beast that the fabrication machine.
9's voice echoed throughout the silent room, shocking those in it to silence. 1 whirled around, eyes wide. 9 continued urgently.
I think it's coming after us. We need a plan, or something to defeat the machine beast.
I think we need to, 9 said, his mind whirling, trying to rapidly think of a plan to rid his coven of the monsters. However, 1 wasn't listening at all. He seemed to snarl like the machine beast, and he knocked 9 to the floor with his staff. He towered over the startled young ragdoll, his eyes filled with wrath and hate.
You've damned us all! What are we supposed to do now, you fool?
1 yelled at 9, who recoiled a bit. The older Stitch punk had been furious with him before, but he had never struck him. 5 reached forward to help 9, but the younger ragdoll gently waved him off.
1, please listen. I'm sorry, I didn't mean for it to take me. I didn't know that the machine beast.
9 pleaded, getting to his feet, but 1 turned away, his cape brushing 9's side.
Ever since you awoke, you've ruined us. Everything has crumbled from beneath us because of you and your witless ideas. And now we're all in danger again. I've tried everything. Lord knows I've tried. But now, we're trapped. And we have nowhere to hide. And wait it out, as we did last time. We would have been all right if you hadn't come along.
1 suddenly whipped around, startled at 9.
I should have done this long ago. I should have at the very first moment you started to question my authority. I should have banished you the first chance I got. Well, now better time late than never.
1 scowled, stepping towards 9 once more. The younger man's heartbeat quickened at these furious words. His face was mere inches from 1's, as the older man spoke threateningly.
Get out. Leave us all be, you curse, you fool. We were not going to put up with you and your heroic deeds any longer. I will not lose any of us at your expense. Get out!
1 said, low and threatening, his eyes gleaming maliciously. 5 gasped, taking a step back in shock. 9 froze, blinking at 1, the words unraveling his mind, one by one.
1, we need to get out of here. We need to think of something.
9 began strongly, but the elder was having none of it.
Are you daft? Leave, I said!
1 yelled, pointing out of the room with his staff, then slamming it against the floor. Extreme agitation. 9 took a step backwards, not knowing what to do. Dismay crashed over him like a tidal wave, and he suddenly felt even much weaker than he had when he first came around.
One, you can't. He brought us back. He didn't know. It's not his fault. You're not going to exile him. You can't.
5 pleaded, protectively taking 9's shoulders and pushing him close. It was as if he was meekly daring 1 to come any closer to him. Terror nearly overwhelmed 9 as he stood, staring at 1. Was he really going to try to make him leave?
Brought us back to a dangerous world, you mean?
1 yelled at 5, his brows pulled together, and making a deep fold in his forehead.
But we need him. He's the one who saved us in the first place. He freed us,
5 exclaimed.
Only after you, I, and the others died.
And we were never really free. 1 contracted, taking a step towards the 2 younger males. 5 frowned at him, becoming angry, something he had rarely felt. But he would not allow the older ragdoll to banish his friend.
If it wasn't for him, we'd still be trapped in the machine beast. And maybe even 7, 3, and 4 wouldn't even be alive by this time.
5 snapped, brow furrowed. 9 looked up at him, surprised by his defense.
3 and 4 are mere children, and 7 is near as much trouble as he is.
1 snapped, pointing at 9.
We were fine without them before he came, and we'll be fine again once he leaves. 9 has saved us more than once. We need him, and I won't let you.
5 yelled at him. He pushed 9 beside him, standing in front of him, shielding him. 1 paused, seething at 5's challenge. He expected this out of 7, 9, or 2, but not this meek boy who'd always follow his orders. Suddenly, the rest of the clan walked into the room, attracted by the sudden noise and loud, angry voices. "What is going on?" 7 demanded, looking at a fuming 1 and 5, who was still holding 9 behind him.
1 is trying to exile 9. He's trying to make him leave,
5 said to her, his voice becoming desperate. 7's face immediately contorted in anger as the others shared shock and apprehensive glances. 9 then came out from behind 5, addressing the others directly.
"Everyone, we need to be on guard. The new machines fixed the fabrication machine. It's alive now, and so is the beast."
There were many gasps of horror from the others, but 9 continued on.
"It took the talisman for me. We need to figure out some sort of plan, something that can keep us safe and get the talisman back."
1 savagely cut 9 off once again, forcing him to take a few steps away as he loomed menacingly over him.
"I am in charge. If I feel you are a threat to our very well-being, it is my duty to keep us safe. Be gone with you!"
he demanded before 7 stepped up to him, her gaze like fire, and her entire figure ready to pounce on 1. The elder, however, stood his ground against her. "How dare you? If it weren't for 9, we wouldn't even be here. And what we were entrusted with would just be jeopardized," 7 said, her fist tightening around her spear as she held it in front of her. 1 scoffed, unfazed by the female's threats.
"And what were we entrusted with, 7?
He snarled.
"The scientist created us to carry the life of the world. He entrusted us with a mission."
9 answered him strongly, standing tall. "A mission we can't afford to abandon," 7 finished, staring heatedly at 1, who searched each face. 2, the twins, 5, and 6, looking horrified at the thought of 9 leaving. 8 walked up and stand by 1, obviously ready to enforce his leader's words. 1 scoffed, shaking his head in disapproval.
"Fine, I will let him stay. But if any of us die because of you..."
1 growled, stepped up to 9. He didn't finish his sentence. but 8 did, when he pounded his fist into his palm, growling. 9 bowed his head, closing his eyes, and nodded. 1 scoffed and stepped away from him. 9 watched him for a moment, brows furrowed with anger. His face then fell into his entire figure, wilted. 5 reached up and placed his hand on his shoulder. As soon as he felt the touch, 9 turned, wrenched himself over 5's grasp, and ran out of the room. 2 and 6 parted to let them through, looking on in surprise. 5 took a step forward to follow his friend, but was stopped as 7 held her hands up to him. The 2 shared a quick look at 7 as 7 sprinted out of the room, following 9. 1 sat back to his jar, while 8 roughly ushered them all out of the room. 9 sat outside, his head rested in his hands, eyes fixed on the ground. How could this happen? He thought they were all safe. Now he'd brought them back into another war, one possibly more deadly than the last. He covered his eyes with his fist, shaking his head. 1 was right. He didn't belong there. He had caused them so much grief, strife, and pain. He should have been exiled. Then he couldn't hurt them anymore. 9, 7 said as she joined him. He didn't even look her way, ashamed, expecting her to scream at him or bring back their coven into a deadly world. Instead, she bent down before him and seized his wrists, taking his hands away from his eyes. She unraveled his fingers and took his hands, holding them gently. We're moving on, trying to throw the machines off our trail. Come on, she said as he sighed, getting up. Now she must truly hate him. 7. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I had no idea he said, then sighed again, words failing him. 7 squeezed his hands tightly, trying her best to reassure him. We'll be fine. Now come on, she said, gently brushing his apology aside, and the 2 walked across the building to join the others. End of Chapter 11.